All right, guys, welcome. We're at Pattern Unboxed, our Pattern podcast where we talk really all things e-commerce and get to learn about some of the senior leadership here at Pattern and learn about what they do and also what Pattern does. So I guess I'll kick it over to you guys. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'll go first. Thanks for having us. My name is Rick Sunderlage. At Pattern, my role is leading one of the sales teams around a 1P sales motion that we support here at Pattern. Pattern has two core models, a 3P model, which is a buy-sell model, and then a 1P model, which is leveraging our tech and our services to accelerate brands' marketplace strategy.
Cool.
And I'm Jed Beck. I'm the CRO of our SaaS division, so our Chief Revenue Officer for SaaS. And I was hired about 6 months ago. Well, I guess it's been a little longer than that. Now, time is flying. But I lead that part of this team. Rick's on my team. And then we also have a side that specifically focuses on our PIM and DAM technology that's called PXM, as well as our TikTok Shop initiative for helping brands with their social selling.
How do you guys work together?
Yeah, I work on a team with several sales reps that support brands in a 1P motion, and I report into Jed, who oversees the 1P model as well as some other SaaS products that Pattern has.
Yeah, and I have a handful of people that report up through me. Rick's team is one of them. It's a very important team. We're working with the largest brands, the highest of enterprise sales, so to speak. When it comes to our SaaS initiative. And then I report up through John LeBaron, who is our CRO of the business.
Cool. And just for like the layman's, if someone doesn't know anything about Pattern, can you guys kind of give us just like a breakdown of what our services are and then also what our tech or what our SaaS is? Because I feel like there's a lot of agencies out there that like pose themselves as a software company, but layer on a bunch of services. But if you pull up the hood, it's just a handful of services. I know that from when we were starting Current Technology, we're certainly a tech company, but we won a lot of business with managed services as well. So I would love just to kind of hear like that breakdown or ratio at Pattern of like, I know we are a tech and we are a data company, but how does that blend with also the services that we do? And just kind of break down exactly what we do and exactly what our software does for someone who doesn't know about us.
Yeah, I'll let Rick add some color and context to this, and I think we can both probably do a good job. But we kind of created the category of marketplace accelerators. Was our original, what we originally did. We started buying and reselling products in the market. And that's what Dave Wright, our founder, that started 12 years ago. And what he found is that capturing data and using data to sell products on marketplaces was a very lucrative approach. But figuring out how to create technology and really be a data-first technology business helped accelerate his ability to sell products online. And so he started buying wholesale products and selling them online, and that became what is our 3P model today. And the tech that we put behind that to be able to accelerate and sell more products by driving more traffic, and we'll talk a little bit about our e-commerce equation throughout this conversation, but it's really driving traffic, making sure that our listings are converting at the highest levels, make sure that our price is protected, where the buy box is owned, and then obviously making sure the products are available by having the right warehouses and being in, just in time in terms of our services, being able to provide the products there. That was the real first step into us being what we are today. Now, since we have developed a myriad of different technology products that we're now allowing the market to participate in, so that they can accelerate, whether they're in a 1P relationship or a 3P relationship with Amazon, or doing business on other marketplaces, and that's become a part of our ethos of being able to provide the best technologies and data in the industry to help brands accelerate. So I don't know if there's anything else you'd add there.
Yeah, that's well said. I think what fascinates me about the model and Pattern as a company and our offering is, we spent 13 years doing what most of the brands that we work with do on a daily basis. I mean, we work with hundreds of brands in a buy-sell model. We understand what it takes to be fully optimized on marketplace, not just from the services and the people, but the tech that optimizes that and drives that. And so over the years, we've had a lot of brands come to us and say, can we just leverage the tech that you've built? Because it seems to work really, really well. And now we're offering that up for 1P brands that want to tap into the tech that we've built. And it's a combination of very sophisticated ad tech. There's a lot of tech and AI around content and, like a PXM solution, which is a PIM dam. You've mentioned the creators team. We have like TikTok Shop and creators, which is, influencer marketing. And it's just a nice holistic combination of tech that works well on marketplaces that drives growth, and some really smart people behind the scenes that support it.
Cool.
Yeah, one of the things we found out early, and like I say, with our 10 plus years of experience, one of the things we found out early is you can build technologies to drive a lot of traffic to listings on marketplaces, and that's only one very small piece of the equation. Otherwise, you're doing, everyone talks about the ROAS game of spending and trying to figure out how to, get more sponsored leads, being in that top 4. Specifically on Amazon, that's been a strategy that brands have used for years. But we found out fast that just driving traffic to listings isn't going to get that algorithmic approach that Amazon, and Amazon's constantly changing, but being able to consistently have and win on organic phrases was not possible if you just drive a bunch of traffic to listings. You had to be able to drive traffic to listings and then also have it convert. So when they click on it, they convert. And then there's all the things that come behind requiring that, like what type of imagery are you using? What type of listings do you have on there? And all the things that come behind that. And then not to mention, do you own the buy box? Otherwise, you're just advertising for somebody else when they win the buy box. And so owning that from top to bottom and then having the products available, all that stuff had to be worked on together for you to get the incremental increases that you wanted to see in e-commerce. And most companies kind of specialize in one or the other of trying to figure out how to approach that equation, whether they're building software or they have services, but they weren't looking at it holistically. And Pattern really, from top to bottom, when we're building tech and when we're doing anything, we're thinking about that whole equation and the outcomes that come from that.
Cool. And I know you mentioned it, and I think you were kind of just like going into it a little bit, but let's talk about the e-commerce equation. Obviously, that's got thrown around a lot, and why is that so core to what Pattern does? And if you guys could just kind of break down that equation for us, it'd be great.
Yeah. You want to give a stab at it first?
Sure. And if you've talked to Pattern, you've heard us talk about the e-commerce equation. It's not an equation that we created, but we live by this equation in all that we do. And the equation is really simple. It's traffic times conversion times price times availability equals revenue. And then you repeat that for lifetime value for the customer. And the reason we like the e-commerce equation is because most of the conversations we have with brands that are navigating their marketplace strategy, have great partners that do maybe a very small portion of the equation. For example, an ad agency working with a brand might focus on traffic, and that's really important, and they're probably really good at the traffic strategy. But as Jed mentioned earlier, if you're just focused on ad spend and ROAS and driving traffic and spending ad dollars, if you don't have buy box ownership, you're essentially spending money for other third-party sellers, and it's a problem. We also look at things like you can drive a ton of traffic to the listings and have a really sophisticated ad strategy, but if the content isn't converting, on Amazon you have 7 images to work with. It really has to tell the story in those 7 images, and if those 7 images in the image stack aren't optimized and converting at the highest level, you're wasting spend and you're missing opportunities. So what I like about the e-commerce equation at Pattern is we look at all of those buckets of the e-commerce equation and we try to optimize traffic and conversion, your content. We try and make sure that the buy box ownership is clean, the seller landscape's clean, the pricing strategy is under control, and that you have availability, you're in stock. And all of these things work in tandem, and it's nice to have all of the data and all of the teams looking at that data in one holistic approach. And I think it's just essential that e-commerce equation, everyone is understanding their role and how that impacts other aspects of the equation.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to note when you talk about the e-commerce equation, we've kind of mentioned this a handful of times during this, but our obsession with data, we always talk about having 38 trillion data points, but gathering data and then building products. And it's kind of cool how the rise of AI and where it is today has allowed us, because of our data aggregation and the technology first approach we've had, it's allowed us to build products that are game changing in the industry. So you look at, every part of the equation he was talking about or referencing just recently is we haven't been just figuring out how to be experts in it, which we are, and we have great professional services behind that, but it's how do we use the data and leverage the data to create repeatable processes and outcomes that are exponential, right? So whether it be driving traffic and using algorithmic bidding to do that, and doing it in a way to where it's patented, right? We have 26 patents or patents pending on this process equation. So every software and technology that we've built has been with the eyes of how do we drive traffic, how do we convert at the highest layer, and how do we ensure you own your buy box and protect your price, right? Those are the things that we're talking about, and you have to do them all. It can't be like, hey, we just want to buy Pattern's traffic, destiny, we call it. We just want to buy that piece. You can't just purchase that because we look at it the whole equation, and there's pieces of technology and AI in each level of that equation that end up making it to where you are winning in the end.
Cool. And I want to get into exactly why 1P brands are coming to Pattern. But before that, can you just, and how it relates to Pattern, can you just break down like the difference between our being a first-party partner at Pattern and then being a third-party partner at Pattern, and what that means to a potential, partner or brand that's listening to this?
We actually have a lot of our brands do a hybrid approach. So it's really interesting to note that you don't have to be one or the other.
Sure.
We really only do our 1P approach for US-based businesses that are, right now, Amazon has businesses that they will only allow to have a 1P relationship with them. So if you're a certain brand, they call them 1P blocked. They will not allow them to move into a 3P relationship today. And that happens with several brands. Some of the largest brands are in relationships where they have to be in a 1P relationship with Amazon, meaning they have to sell their products on the marketplace to Amazon directly. And then Amazon from there has the ability to, do what they do on their side. The one thing with that, though, is you're in a category, and Amazon cares deeply about the category growing. So they want to make sure that there's good competition within the category. And for us, we just want our brands to grow. So if you work with us within a category, we're going to make sure that you stand out amongst the category with our technologies. But we can't buy and resell your products. But we can on Walmart, and we can in Canada or somewhere internationally. And that's the nice part about being a global business, is that you could work with us to where you use the same technology, because it's the same thing. What we're doing, the technology across the e-commerce equation, is the same whether we buy and resell your products in a third-party relationship or we manage you from a 1P perspective with just the technology. And all of it works to where it accelerates and helps you see growth. A couple quick notes of just statistics. You typically see that you can do about half the ad spend on our top brands and get double the growth based on your category, compared to your category. And so that's what the technology magic is. And like I said, whether you're in a 3P or 1P relationship, it works. But like I said, a lot of these brands are doing both. We're buying and reselling products in certain parts of their business, and we're also just managing 1P here in the US.
Yeah, and I would say, in a 3P motion, there are two core examples of a 3P model. One would be the brand itself owns their strategy on Amazon's marketplace, meaning the brand would ship product into Amazon FBA, and when you purchase a product on Amazon, it's sold by the brand, usually fulfilled by Amazon, sometimes fulfilled by the brand in their own logistics, 3PL. Or it could be a 3P motion where the brand sells product to an accelerator like Pattern, where Pattern purchases product from the brand, and then we do all of the Amazon prep and run the strategy through Seller Central on Amazon on behalf of the brand, versus a 1P model where these brands have a direct relationship with Amazon. Amazon is cutting the brand purchase orders, and the brand is selling directly to Amazon. And when you buy that product in a 1P motion on Amazon, it's usually sold by Amazon, shipped by Amazon. There's advantages to a 3P versus a 1P. We can get into that and maybe at a different time, but usually 3P 3P sellers have more control over their brand and their pricing strategy, whereas 1P, you're basically allowing Amazon to set the price.
Got it. And why are brands coming to Pattern? And I mean, in a perfect world, like I'm all about just what's important now, focusing on yourself. But from a sales perspective, there's always going to be another like, suitor, someone at the table that's probably offering brand something. So, Jed, when you are selling to a brand, are there, who else is at the table and what are we selling against? Or is like what we do at Pattern just so outstanding that like no one can kind of compare and have the data that we're sitting on? Or are we beating them in price? Are we beating them in service? Are we beating them in software? Or is it a combination of everything?
I actually love this question, and I would just like preface the question by saying we are the largest seller on Amazon today, and there's a reason for it. I mean, you can go and Google that and take a look at it. There's a reason why we sell more products than anyone else, and it is because we're a data-first company. We're obsessed with data, and we're obsessed with creating products that help us crack the algorithm, so to speak, right? Like we're constantly looking at ensuring that we're, really focused on that e-commerce equation. But you asked about like competition in the market. We really are very unique in terms of us. We are a technology company. So if people try to fit us into a box of like, well, you're an ad agency, or they might have a handful of tools, and sometimes it's 5 or 6 different tech tools that come from like, a data company that's trying to provide them with certain data. They have, a PIM and DAM system that's helping them. They've got an ad agency in place. And there's usually, like I say, 5 or 6 tools that would kind of equate to something more similar to what we do, but it also still falls flat in terms of the way that we look at the world because of the data that we have, data richness, but it's also just the way we look at it. Once again, we don't really sell individual pieces of the e-commerce equation. It's very holistic. And so, I've used the analogy before of like, it's like a car lot where people are kind of looking for the best car on the car lot, and you're not really going to find us because we're an airplane. We're somewhere different. It's not really the same thing.
Totally.
And it's very much a different approach to the way to solve it. But so if you're just trying to compare us to an ad agency, or you're trying to compare us to a specific software or technology, you're going to be off. Like typically when someone does an RFQ for us, they can't even really do it unless we help them like put the RFQ together. They won't put it together in a way because we are very much an AI company,
Yep.
a technology company that happens to do a lot of things that these companies do in e-commerce.
Yeah, it's really from a pattern creator's perspective, in my history with creators and on the influencer side, it would be like such frustrating sales motions because the influencer space and the creator economy is still really new, and the old, like the very beginning of brands and working with creators was they had a PR company that did gifting, right? And we essentially do product seeding, but our product seeding is souped up with AI and a bunch of data and a bunch of software that we're using just to optimize the whole process. So it'd be so like deflating when someone would be like, oh, well, we're good. We already have a PR company that does gifting. It's like, no, we don't. That's totally different. We're a technology company. We're not like a PR company. But what do you see? What are good questions that brands should be asking their agency partners about?
Yeah, I love this question. There are a lot of questions that I think would be interesting to ask, but I think the number one question that I would ask my agency partner is my ad spend truly driving incremental revenue? And I say that because the old way of managing ad spend through a set list of keywords, through spreadsheets, driving to a ROAS number, that has worked for a 3P motion or a 1P motion over the years, and brands are being successful and they're seeing growth doing that. But what we see at Pattern is there is a massive opportunity to capture more traffic through a non-branded organic rank strategy, meaning, how can you spend ad dollars that truly adds incrementality to your traffic strategy? There are a lot of non-branded keywords, search terms that are highly relevant that a brand could definitely rank on organically if they were to just identify and know what those terms were and spend a little bit of ad dollars to become relevant. Amazon makes money on ads and when someone buys. An agency makes money when, right, they take a cut of ad spend. At Pattern, we don't make any money on the ad dollars. And I think it's important that we do it that way because we want to drive incrementality for the brand. We want the brand to, we call it owning the space versus renting the space. And the way that they do that is by ranking in the top 4 organically on as many search terms as are relevant and winnable for that brand or for that ASIN. And I think that's probably the number one question that I would ask is, what are you doing to drive incrementality from a growth perspective with my ad budget?
Yeah, one of the questions I have too, like he's getting into the traffic strategy, which is so interesting, but I'd like to even up-level it to like, what is your AI strategy in general? 84% of brands or companies in general, the number one focus of their business is figuring out how to use generative AI in general. Like, how can I use it? And if you asked your ad agencies, like, how are you using AI? There might be ways in which they're using it. Everybody is trying to figure out an AI strategy. But when it comes to e-commerce and marketplaces, our AI strategy is across the entire portion. He mentioned a lot of what we're talking about in how we drive traffic, with our AI strategies using patented technology. One of the examples I love using with that is that, one of the brands we recently did a QBR with, we found that we were able to do enough work specific to their, what was it again? It was their, how many bid optimization, that's what it was. Bid optimization specifically, the number of bid optimization changes that were made throughout the year would equate to a human doing it for over 120 years, every day, all day. So if you start looking at that, the bid optimization strategies, that's what you're competing against when you're competing against AI. That's one element of what we're doing across the e-commerce equation. And, so that's our patented technology, Destiny, that's driving, our bid optimization to make sure that we're winning more organic words. But then you get into actually content. Let's just say you have a couple hundred ASINs that you're trying to manage content for. How often are those getting updated, and how are you comparing those across your digital shelf? Who are you competing against, and how do you know who you're competing against?
Totally.
And if a human's trying to do that, or you're trying to do it with some technology that's siloed, and you don't have the right data that's being introduced into that, all of a sudden now it's impossible for you to create and convert. And these are the type of things where you ask your ad agency, how are we doing that? Or how are we owning the buy box? It'd be interesting to see how their response to that is, because like I say, most of the things we're doing are patented as well. And not to mention, we're the only ones with the amount of data that we have specific to marketplaces.
And I would say, yeah, that's great. Another question that I would probably ask my ad agency would be, can you show me or tell me how many search terms or keywords my brand is ranking in the top 4 organically? And can you tell me which of my competitors are ranking next to me and what is their list of keywords that they're ranking on? We view Amazon as a search engine, and a lot of people are searching for products and they don't know the brand name or the brand ID, but they're looking for products that those brands offer. And so how do you capture that traffic and drive incrementality by becoming relevant for a much broader list of search terms or keywords where your products are extremely relevant, but the consumers just don't know that your brand offers that? And I think that's where a lot of the opportunity is to capture more of the traffic and build that moat. And hopefully, if you have imagery that converts, the e-commerce equation does its thing.
Yeah, that was actually the first. I mean, what he's talking about is the traffic and organic strategy is really what started this, where we are today, being the largest seller on Amazon. And then now we've added multiple layers of technology behind that continue to drive the value higher and higher. But I love when he talks about, like they say, that patented technology, because that was, I mean, ultimately what built us into the company that we are today.
Sure, and obviously we're sitting on a lot of technology and patents, and we do a fantastic job, and we're partner obsessed. And the fact that a lot of our media, or most of our media spend, is all just pass through speaks volumes of that partner obsessed, approach we take. That said, you can't bat 1,000 or pitch a perfect game. So what are challenges or obstacles with brands? Like, what are those? And hopefully they don't happen a lot, but those Monday morning calls where you have your tail between your legs with the client and you're like, oh no, like where can things get a little sketch?
I think it's mostly, we had this thing that we called the trough of disillusionment. When you're making the transition from your old strategy to your new strategy, at times you have to understand that you have to really lean in and start understanding that you are changing the strategy, the old way in which you did it. We're not going to set and purchase, and we will still protect, in the ROAS still is something that we measure, but we have what we call true ROAS, which is really kind of taking out what would you have already won because you were already winning that keyword or those phrases. And so, but there is a strategy that I would say implementation as you onboard, that's been probably one of the trickier parts, I guess I would say, but it's not even that bad. That's not one of those things where I want to make it worse, but you're kind of asking some of the maybe gotchas. Is that I think as people transition in the first few months, just the strategy is so different.
Sure.
And compared to what they're doing, that they have to, hit the I believe button, jump in and really lean on the KPIs and watch the growth of the business.
Yep.
But it does take, especially as we get the ad strategy put in place and the technology set up, there is a little bit of a learning curve in those first few months.
Yeah, and I would say, most of the brands that Pattern works with do have an omni-channel strategy, meaning they have a brick and mortar retail presence. For example, we see, like in the tools and hardware category as an example, that's a space where it's heavily distributed. There's lots of long-term relationships with partners, a wide list of sellers, authorized sellers, and that's kind of that's worked well in brick and mortar and retail. We run into some challenges sometimes when brands try to embrace an e-commerce strategy or a marketplace strategy, and it's the complete opposite. It's single seller wins in that strategy. And so some of the challenges that happen is brands, it might take a while for the executive team at the brand level to understand the difference between brick and mortar and retail and wide distribution and wide selection versus any e-commerce or marketplace strategy where it's really like a single seller strategy wins out, because you need to own the buy box on Amazon to advertise. And if you're sharing the buy box with 30 different authorized sellers or unauthorized sellers, no one wants to own or spend or own the ad strategy. And so there's just a missed opportunity to really optimize and to see growth and acceleration. And so, it's tricky to help brands navigate this brick and mortar retail omni-channel play versus a purely digital approach, and how do they play nicely. We talk about growth strategies with the brand, and a lot of the time the conversations that we have is, we at Pattern identify where we think we can drive growth, and we're going to own these levers. But you as a brand, we're counting on you to lean in and understand that we need you to do certain things to see this equation come together. And so it's a delicate dance, but we're good at it, and I think we've proven that out. And I think brands that have adopted that strategy have seen a ton of success, and we love to help walk them through that.
Yeah, and I think I would even add, even when we get into creative and what we suggest that you use for images and what type of things that you have on your listings, it's all data driven. And for brands, that's new. They're like, no, we really like this look and feel, or we really like using these types of words for our brand, but the data tells us otherwise. And the data tells us that we would drive more growth if we had certain things in there. And so those are always those challenges for brands to have to kind of let go of the reins.
Yep.
And say, we're going to hit the I believe button based on your data, and that's what actually wins, right? I mean, we'll find things all the time, like just an example of a recent brand we were working with, like we found that in their digital shelf, like just having a picture of what's in the box would win. And they're like, oh, but we don't really care about that thing. It's like, but the data does. The data tells us you'd win more. And doing that showed that it drove incremental wins in conversion, right? Increase in conversion. Having certain words or language, right? Adding gluten-free to something, where, we haven't thought about that, or, oh, everything's gluten-free in this, so we don't think about that. It's like, yeah, well, guess what? It matters because it's converting higher, right? And all those things are a culmination of the things that we talk about with brands, where they have to start kind of allowing the data to speak and the data to tell them their direction. And you can still be creative. You can still add your touch to it. We work in conjunction with brands, but they really do have to start going, okay, we're going to trust you on this one.
Totally.
Because it's a data approach.
Yep. It's crazy too, because even outside of Amazon Marketplace, TikTok Shop Marketplace is filled with examples of that, because it's the ultimate, I am the brand, you need to trust us, that we need to be hands off and let the creators create. Because from an algorithmic perspective, as a creator, these creators don't even realize it, but they're doing data analysis because they're creating so much content that they know, oh, if I use this font compared to this font, I get 1,000 views versus 500 views. So it's really cool that we've now like kind of taken what we're doing in Amazon Marketplace, and we're also seeing that in TikTok Shop as well.
Well, one thing I'd say when you're mentioning that too, it's starting to bleed together. The social strategy and your marketplace strategy is starting to come together, where
Totally.
We're starting to even be able to track like what's working on social and how it impacts their Amazon business, which is super cool that we're starting to bring together. It's not just marketplaces, because social is going to be a huge strategy. It's funny, if you go and use any LLM, use ChatGPT, but ask like what are some of the key strategies for brands, you're going to see number one, AI, how to use AI, which is us.
Yep.
And how to use it, and you're going to see what's your social strategy, which is us as well.
Totally.
Because those are one and the same for us.
And being able to tie those is going to be so important, because like a kind of a funny example or a personal example to me, like outside of Pattern and the things I do here, I've always done music, and I release music on Spotify.
Oh, cool.
And part of that approach is I have to create content on TikTok. And I see it, if I have a video that's gotten swept up by the algorithm and it's pushed out to the For You page, I go right over to my Spotify for artists, and the streams are completely reflective of that. So it's very similar when we talk about TikTok Shop, and it's like, oh, well, we only got 100,000, items bought on TikTok Shop. It's like, well, go check your Amazon too, because I've done it a million times where I see it on TikTok and I'm like, I could probably get it cheaper on Amazon.
Yeah, we have actually some pretty interesting examples. Like I say, we're starting to track this very closely as we bring our social strategy more closely aligned with our marketplace strategy. And it's all data. Like I say, we care deeply about the outcomes and how we create those outcomes with data. But we have some examples of some of our largest brands where they have a product that is really obscure and one that they don't really focus on.
Totally.
And then they do some content on TikTok Shop, or do some content on TikTok, and the virality of that, they get something that, like you say, hits marketplace. Then you go on Amazon and you watch, all of a sudden it spikes dramatically on Amazon. And then, not to mention, once you've had that happen, we've tracked this to where it'll settle again, but it stays 50% at times higher ongoing from that time forward.
Yep.
And so as you talk about like what is your social strategy along with this 1P strategy that we have for these major brands, we kind of look at them as there's something there together that you can start doing. It's great for discovery of product as well.
Yeah. Last year we sold DKB, which I believe they're like it's a pretty, not boring, but a standard home, pots and pans, not the sexiest of branding. And we sold them on doing, creating content for TikTok. And one TikToker made a video about like a frying pan or like just something so mundane, got 1 million views, and then we got blown up on Slack with happy messages being like, our Amazon is popping off. It's like, yeah, you guys should download TikTok. It's not just for 13-year-olds to do like little dances.
That's exactly right. It's become a really important strategy that brands need to think about, coupled with the technologies. And like I'm in love with the AI conversation right now, because I think 84% of brands, if you look at the statistics, 84% of brands believe that they're using some type of an AI strategy, but only like 2% of them feel like it's mature.
Sure.
Like their strategy. It's a really tough problem to solve. And especially as you get into ad agencies and siloed AI, right? Like every one of these parts of this equation we're talking about are these tools. They all claim to use AI, and they probably do in some way, shape, or form. But the data lake that we're using to provide our AI strategy all comes from the same place. It's a massive data lake of products that come with history too. 10 years of history that can't be replicated.
Sure.
And when you're using that, you can really start seeing and building strategies that are very, very unique to your specific business, your category, across the entire e-commerce equation. And when you talk to a brand, when you talk to a board or an executive level for any of these brands or any of these companies, they are looking for this. They're trying to figure out how to crack this code. And like I say, we keep coming back to like trying to compare us to an agency model or trying to compare us. It's so uniquely different. We're a tech company. We are a tech company first that happens to do these other things.
Totally. So we're coming up on time, and last maybe one or two questions. Part of the reason that I was really excited to, produce this podcast and have all of these conversations was the first thing that I noticed when I came on board to Pattern almost like 3 years ago is that we work with a lot of smart people, like some really big brains at Pattern. And I was so inspired by all of these people. I was like, oh, I can't wait to have conversations with all of these people and learn what they do. Who at Pattern inspires you, or who has had an impact for you guys? No wrong answers here.
Man, I could go down the list. There is a handful of people here. I mean, you mentioned Trig Jensen that's here, has built several businesses and had several. When you talk about from a tech perspective and SaaS perspective, no one, I don't think, the proof's in the pudding when you've been able to have the outcomes that he's created. And so you have a guy like that that's heading the TikTok Shop initiative or TikTok and Creator Initiative, having been purchased by Pattern and brought over here, just a super intelligent guy. John McGee, who came with the purchase of PXM as the PXM president of that particular business. And now that we've integrated a lot of those businesses into what do we do today, but being around those individuals and see, John specifically on his AI strategy and how he's implemented AI within our sales team are a couple of people. But then we've even got, John LeBaron, who's one of the smartest humans I've ever been around. In terms of his recall, if you've met him, he remembers you. And he'll recall things about brands. I mean, he is a savant when it comes to conversations around brands and what's going on and the challenges that they're up against. And then the tech that he's helping bring together and provide to the industry is second to none. Like I say, we've made some acquisitions, but all of it now is uniquely, like, hard part with acquisitions typically is trying to get that all pieced together. But it's been seamless in the way in which we've been able to bring that together in a really powerful way to where for the brands, it's one product. It's our EXP platform and the experience that they're able to create. But those are a few people to me that have been inspirational as I get here. And then obviously Rick, I'd put him in there as just a phenomenal sales leader that's doing phenomenal things here at Pattern to really push this new initiative forward. And like I say, we're only 7 months into this journey, 8 months into this journey, and the pipeline of companies that are getting on board to do what we're doing, to use the tech that Pattern uses, and the way in which Rick's managed this team has been phenomenal to watch. So, I mean, you probably were asking for one. I named 4, but we've got some great people here.
I love it.
Yeah, thanks, Jed. It's interesting. There's a lot of really smart people at Pattern that you see at conferences, on demos, on Zoom conversations, in-person meetings. And then there's the people on what we call our revenue operations team that are the true data nerds behind everything that we do at Pattern. People like Alex Hamilton, Nate Wynn, who, you'll see them on calls with brands, but most of their time is spent looking at the opportunities, leveraging the data that we see, and uncovering winnable strategies for the brands. And it's hard to do that. Imagine, never talking to a brand and just looking at their data and coming up with strategies that are being, game-changing strategies that help drive their business to a whole different level. And their ability to look at the data and make sense of it repeatedly on a daily basis for a variety of brands is impressive, and it's appreciated. And we have a lot of really smart people that you never see, you never talk to, that are really talented with data.
It's a good point. I put Casey Green in that as well. That leads that group as some of the smartest people that I've been around. I think it'd probably be sad of us not to recognize as well. One of the most inspirational is our founder, Mel and Dave Wright. Dave, every time he opens his mouth, because what he's built has been incredible. But the interesting thing about him, to me, is really the ethos of what's been created here is that he is data obsessed. And you see it every time he presents. He literally doesn't do anything without, data. His favorite brands are tied up in data companies that, Garmin, he loves Garmin because they're a huge data company that can produce data at an incredible rate. And, and that's really what he's built this business on. And every time he speaks, it's not about anything but how can we use the data to help the brands win. And that's everything. And you can see it every time he does anything. And that's been pretty interesting to watch. He's one of the most unique CEOs I've ever worked for or been around.
Cool. Last question for both of you guys. Where do we see Pattern in 1 year from now? And then where do we see it in 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think, when you look at from a revenue perspective, the amount of revenue that's under management within the Pattern model in a 3P motion or a 1P motion is massive. It's sizable and it's impressive. I see Pattern being one of those offerings that will be hard to compete against because of the scale and the learnings that we have. We've partnered with really great brands, and we've had a lot of learnings and insights from those partnerships. And the amount of data that we're sitting on really puts us in a nice position to, I think, be probably the largest, the most impressive offering at the most cost-effective price. And I think that's where everything that we're doing at Pattern is driving to. Where can we find scale? Where can we find efficiencies? The Amazon marketplace is hard to make money on. It's a very tight margin business, and brands struggle with, they create the product, they're selling it on a platform that they haven't built, and then they get this middle layer. And what we're trying to do is just help brands achieve high growth at really good efficiencies and at scale. And if you can crack that code, then I think it becomes an unbeatable strategy. I would like to see Pattern be Utah's first Fortune 500 company. And I think we're well on our way to, hitting a $10 billion revenue run rate, which would be a phenomenal achievement here locally.
Yeah, that's why I came here, is to be a part of something like that, building one of the first Fortune 500 companies in the state of Utah. And it has that potential. As you were talking, I was thinking about this, like the analogy of we have a child here that has all the athletic ability to be the most incredible athlete in the country, right? And it all matters with what we do with that potential. And the potential's here for it to be the largest company, to be a massive IPO, to have an incredible future. And the sky's the limit because of the data that we have and the technology we have and the hiring practices that we use of making sure we get the smartest people here at Pattern. All of that coming together makes it to where the potential of this organization is wild, like wild. But you only reach that if we do, if we continue to work at it and continue to evolve and continue to stay with it. And I know we will, so the outcomes are going to be incredible, but it's potential. Like there's so much potential here for it to be, one of the great stories in the state of Utah.
I was going to say, I think the great John Wooden said, ability gets you to the top, but character keeps you there.
That's exactly right.
I certainly feel like that's kind of the vibe where we're at, where we have all of the data lakes that we're sitting on, all of the people. But I think that kind of partner-obsessed approach and that transparent approach is what's going to keep us or make us one of those top countries or companies in Utah.
Yeah, they always talk about, too, the team sport element. If you ever talk to Dave, he'll bring it up every time. I mean, we have those 4 tenets, but one of them being team sport. The way in which we work together and the way in which we continue to evolve and push each other, that's where the outcomes become really special. And Dave's very good at this, but I think you'll see it at every level that we're a big team sport company where teamwork and working together, whether you're in the 3P part of our business or whether you're more focused on the tech side, like everybody just wants to win and what's going to be in the best interest of the company, to create those outcomes. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think Pattern tends to attract, like you said, really smart, talented people, especially from the data side. If you're a data scientist or an AI enthusiast, I think Pattern will be one of those companies where people want to work for because of the way we look at data, the way we use data, and the sheer volume of data that we have, and the impact that it's having to deliver for people all over the world, good experiences, consumer experiences. But I see Pattern being one of those companies that if you're a data nerd, Pattern should be top of your list of a place to work.
Cool.
Yeah, we do those Accelerate conferences, and every year, I'm used to being a part of a software business. I came from the SaaS side, and usually once a year you'll have some big reveal, but then you'll do some iterations off of that. But I mean, you go to our Accelerate conference, and every year 5 or 6 new innovations are being announced that are all game changing in of themselves. So like the speed at which we can innovate because of the data and because of the technology, when we have more than 300 people that are dedicated to creating technologies and upgrading our technologies constantly. That's all they're focused on, and that's scratching the surface. And you couple that with our AI, and couple that with everything else that we're doing with our data. It's going to be very hard to not continue to see amazing technologies. And I would suspect for the next several years, every year you'll see 5 or 6 new really cool things that we're doing with the data to help brands accelerate.
Cool. I love it, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming on to Pattern Unboxed. And obviously you're welcome to come and chat whenever you know where the studio is. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us, John.
Yep, thanks for having us.